Professor Noakes on a charge of unprofessional conduct. The majority of this committee find you not guilty. And as indicated initially, the minority judgment will be read by Dr. Liddle. Dr. Liddle, you may proceed.
I don't accept the term judgment. Although I'm in a minority, I cannot presume to profess a judgment. And all I sort of really wanted to do was to sort of really give my reasons why sort of really it's I have voted against the rest of the committee. Firstly, when looking at the charge, Advocate van der Nest in the final submission sort of really it's point 88.2 advise, and I think that was the only applicable points, that it was that we should consider that it was unconventional in a sense of not being evidence-based, and that it did not conform to the guidelines referred to. That I think was the only applicable advice. I don't think any of the others really sort of really it's, could be used in determining. I felt that the pro forma in the evidence and submissions had conclusively shown that the respondent is registered as a medical practitioner, right? And I just want to put in brackets here jurisdiction, and provided sufficient evidence to compel me to vote that Professor Noakes be found guilty as charged. The pro forma presented evidence regarding jurisdiction that by virtue of Professor Noakes' registration, the HPCSA had legal jurisdiction, and also that the respondent was allowed ample opportunity to contest this point. It is interesting to consider that if that opportunities had been used, and if it had been proven that there was no jurisdiction, this case would have ended at the beginning. And it's open to speculation, sort of really why the respondent did not exercise or argue that point. I will record my reasons for my vote, but mostly based on Professor Noakes' evidence. Heading unconventional. The advice is unconventional in the extreme, in that there had been extensive work and collaboration in public health globally towards exclusive breastfeeding, and the usage of the term weaning had been phased out. Professor Noakes admitted that his terminology was unconventional. He also suggested that he should have used other terminology. And the reference is volume 16, page 2450, line numbers 24 to 25. No evidence was laid that he had submitted any changes or corrections on Twitter subsequent to the initial tweet. Instead, he commented that errors in his tweet should have and were corrected by other tweeters in, quote, the nature of Twitter, unquote. That's volume 17, page 2516, lines 20 to 22. Professor Noakes also accepted that ill-defined messages in Twitter are open to millions of people. Volume 16, page 2404, and that a reader could have interpreted his tweet to infer discontinuation of breastfeeding. That's volume 16, page 2404, line 4. He further in evidence agreed that the term weaning may not be conventional, quote, but is acceptable to him, unquote. That's volume 16, page 2371, lines 8 to 9. Much has been made about the limitation of a tweet not allowing for long-windedness and only being limited to 140 characters. However, it's interesting to note that there's no limitation on the number of tweets or even consequential tweets. And sort of 2 tweets would mean 280 characters. 3 consequent tweets would mean 420 characters, and so and so. I feel Professor Noakes was wrong to even have created an element of doubt against such an important public health message that took years to entrench. New heading: harm. The absence of any recorded harm is, I believe, a fortunate consequence and not an indication of innocence, and also does not exclude unreported and presently unknown evidence of harm. New heading: experience. Professor Noakes confirmed that he had no clinical and or nutritional experience in pediatrics or neonatology. He further evidenced that such experience was irrelevant. It's volume 17, page 2584, lines 9 to 20. He further misunderstood and misquoted an important pediatric article. Volume 17, pages 2698 to 2704. It is thus patently obvious that tweeting on breastfeeding and infant diets fell outside his scope of expertise. New heading: LCHF. The term is poorly defined and open to confusion. This confusion has been further emphasized and aggravated by Professor Noakes, who testified. 1. LCHF has several definitions. 2. LCHF is potentially different to low carbohydrate, high fat diet. That is in volume 17, page 2563, line numbers 11 to 25. 3. LCHF fits entirely with South African Pediatric Dietary Guidelines, volume 17, page 2565, lines 4 to 5. 4. His book Real Meal Revolution is the only resource to get further answers other than to email him, volume 18, it's page 2633. Further admitted, point 5, to several errors in the Real Meal Revolution and the associated web page. Point 6, Real Meal Revolution does not deal with complementary feeding. Volume 17, page 2565, lines 14 to 20. Point 7, Banting had been substituted for LCHF in the Real Meal Revolution. Volume 16, page 2378, line 23 to page 2379, line 7. New heading: Unsolicited advice. Professor Noakes did not adequately answer questions as to why he made the unsolicited reference to weaning. The impression that the reason was only to punt his books was never refuted, nor was any contrary evidence led. He further modified his assertions that carbohydrates were not essential in infancy by evidencing the need, quote, the need to correct that statement at this time. It's volume 16, page 2443. New heading: Ethics. A registered medical practitioner does not abrogate his ethical responsibility even on public platforms outside the doctor-patient relationship. One needs to always be aware of statements made in whatever capacity, but especially so on public platforms. Advocate van der Nes confirmed this in his final submissions. Professor Noakes, according to Advocate Bookchamp, fell short on each of the 4 pillars of bioethics. The further difficulty is the creation of the digital imprint on social media that remains permanently entrenched. The tweet remains still without any correction by author, A1 scientist, Professor Dr. Noakes, who remains respected and revered by millions, including myself. In conclusion, I reiterate my conviction and vote that Professor Noakes be found guilty as charged. Thank you.
Thank you.